The day Earth was visited by aliens, everything changed. The sky above the planet was torn apart by a thunderous roar that shook every city, rattling the nerves of every living being. The source of the noise was a massive alien ship, larger than any human-made structure, descending slowly into the atmosphere. As it hovered over Earth's largest cities, its dark, metallic surface gleamed ominously against the daylight, casting enormous shadows on the ground below. People stopped in their tracks, staring up, their hearts filled with a mix of awe and fear. The world's governments, armed with every weapon they had ever developed, laser cannons, nuclear warheads, and more, scrambled into action, but the aliens showed no fear. As the human forces launched everything they had, the alien ship simply absorbed the attacks. Each missile, each blast from their best weapons, exploded against the ship's surface with no effect at all. The ship seemed completely indestructible, as though the very technology of Earth was as weak as a child's toy. The world's leaders, watching from their command centers, realized the terrifying truth. Their strongest weapons were useless against these invaders. The alien ship's doors opened slowly, and a figure emerged, tall and graceful, its skin shimmering silver in the sunlight. This being, towering over any human, looked down at the world with contempt. Through a translator, its voice echoed across the cities, calm yet filled with cold authority. "We have arrived and Earth will be ours," the alien leader declared. The sound of their words reverberated across the globe. The message was clear. Resistance was pointless. Humanity's most powerful weapons had failed, and the invaders were already claiming Earth as their own. The leader laughed as it spoke, a cruel, almost mocking sound that made every human watching shiver. "Your weapons are nothing but toys. You cannot fight us." The alien leader added, the words cutting through the air like a blade. The aliens had traveled the galaxy, conquering countless planets and wiping out civilizations with ease. This was not their first invasion, and they had no doubt about the outcome. Earth's might was nothing compared to their own. They moved through the cities, making sure everyone saw their power. Alien soldiers followed, clearing areas and ensuring that no human dared resist. They used their advanced technology to break through every barrier, demolishing buildings and crushing resistance with a flick of their weapons. No one dared fight back. No one even had the strength to. As the devastation spread, the alien leader looked down from the ship, satisfied. "Let them cower," it said to its soldiers. "Their resistance will crumble in time." On the ground, human leaders watched helplessly, unable to do anything. The world was facing its worst nightmare, a power so superior that even humanity's strongest weapons could not make a dent. The aliens had arrived, and nothing seemed able to stop them. In the face of the alien invasion, the leaders of Earth were plunged into panic and despair. No one knew what to do. The alien forces had wiped out the world's military in a matter of hours, and their technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Cities lay in ruins, and the alien ships hovered ominously above, ensuring that any attempt at resistance would be swiftly crushed. Amid the chaos, one man stood apart from the others. Ethan, a former soldier turned scientist, had been following the developments of the alien invasion from his hidden lab. He had spent years working on a secret project, a weapon designed to disrupt advanced technology. Though he had never fully completed it, he believed that it could be the key to saving humanity. Time was running out, but he knew that if there was a chance, it lay with his creation. Without hesitation, Ethan contacted the world's leaders. "I have a solution," he told them, his voice steady despite the panic around him. "I just need 48 hours. Give me that, and I will finish the weapon." The world's leaders had little choice but to trust him. With the alien forces wreaking havoc everywhere, they agreed to give him the time he needed. The clock was ticking, and Ethan worked tirelessly day and night, pushing himself to the limits of his endurance. He was no stranger to pressure. He had served as a soldier before turning to science. But this was different. The world's fate rested on his shoulders, and the weight of that responsibility was almost unbearable. Every moment counted. While Ethan labored in his lab, the aliens continued their merciless conquest. Saran, the leader of the alien forces, reveled in his superiority. He watched as his troops dismantled human resistance effortlessly, his laughter ringing through the cities. "Such weak creatures," he sneered to his officers. "They believe they can challenge us." Sauron was confident that nothing could stop him. Humanity's military might have proven utterly ineffective, and he knew that nothing they could throw at him would make a difference. Still, he couldn't resist the urge to toy with the humans, making them suffer even more. He ordered his soldiers to intensify their efforts, burning buildings and capturing survivors. The destruction was systematic as the aliens made their way across the globe. Despite their overwhelming power, a spark of defiance still burned in the hearts of a few humans. Ethan, isolated in his lab, was determined to be the one to bring that spark to life. He worked feverishly, knowing that every second mattered. As he completed the final adjustments to the weapon, he realized just how crucial this moment was. There would be no second chances. If he failed, the Earth would fall and the aliens would reign. With everything he had, Ethan focused on his work, determined to finish it before it was too late. The weapon he had built wasn't just a tool of destruction, it was humanity's last hope. It had to work. Zoran, the alien leader, stood on the streets of what was once a thriving human city, his eyes scanning the destruction he had caused. His towering form, clothed in silver armor, cast a long shadow as he walked among the wreckage. The city, now a ruin of crumbled buildings and smoldering fires, was a testament to the power of the invaders. The humans had tried to fight, throwing everything they had at the alien forces, but none of their weapons had any effect. Zoran's soldiers had swept through the streets, cutting down resistance with ease, and now there was nothing left but a few scattered survivors. He couldn't help but laugh at the humans' futile attempts to stop them. The noise echoed through the empty streets, a harsh, mocking sound. "Look at them," he said to his officers, gesturing to the survivors cowering in fear. "They think they can stand against us. Pathetic." His voice carried the weight of centuries of conquests, as though he had seen this scene play out countless times before. Sauron had seen civilizations fall, entire species wiped out by his hands. Each new world had been another easy victory, and Earth seemed no different. To him, these humans were nothing more than insects to be crushed. As he surveyed the destruction, his soldiers continued their work, rounding up the remaining survivors and securing the area. The alien technology was far superior to anything humanity could have imagined. Their weapons, capable of leveling entire cities with a single blast, were as effortless as flicking a switch. Every attempt by the humans to resist had been met with failure. "We don't need to waste time with them," Sauron said dismissively, turning away from the ruined city. "Their fear will be enough to break them. Let them watch their world burn." The soldiers nodded, continuing their march through the streets. Sauron was right, of course. Earth was as good as theirs. Still, there was something that intrigued him about these humans. Despite their apparent weakness, they had resisted in their own way. They hadn't simply given up, even as their cities fell and their armies were destroyed. There was something in their spirit that made Sauron pause for a moment. Why do they still resist? He wondered aloud. But the thought quickly passed. In the end, it didn't matter. Resistance would crumble under the weight of their superior forces. His laughter returned, louder this time, as the soldiers continued their mission. There was no one left to stop them. The humans were nothing, the galaxy was vast, and the aliens had conquered it all. Earth would fall like every other planet before it, and soon Sauron would claim his place as the ruler of yet another world. Ethan's fingers flew across the controls, his mind racing as he worked on the final adjustments to the weapon. His lab was dark except for the eerie glow of his screens and the hum of machinery. He had not slept in days, driven by the sheer weight of what was at stake. The world had been plunged into chaos, and the alien invaders, led by Zoran, were only growing more ruthless with each passing hour. Despite his exhaustion, Ethan kept going, focused on the task before him. Outside his lab, the situation grew increasingly dire. Cities lay in ruins, the air filled with the sounds of destruction. The alien forces showed no mercy, moving through Earth's largest urban centers with ease. Sauron had made it clear that Earth was to be his, and humanity was no match for his power. Each day, more survivors were rounded up, herded like cattle, while entire populations were wiped out. Governments had collapsed, and military forces were utterly decimated. The survivors, scattered and broken, watched helplessly as their world was taken from them. The alien technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered, leaving the Earth defenseless. Ethan's weapon, still incomplete, was humanity's only hope. He had spent years developing the core principles of the device, a weapon capable of disrupting alien technology, but now he was racing against the clock. The design was based on a theory he had been working on for years, a high-frequency pulse that could disable alien technology by destabilizing its power core. If he could just get the frequency right, the weapon could send a shockwave strong enough to disable the entire alien fleet. But there was no time for second guesses or mistakes. He knew this was a one-shot deal. If the weapon failed, humanity would have no chance. Still, Ethan pressed on. Each calculation, each adjustment had to be perfect. He ignored the sound of explosions outside, the occasional rumble of distant impacts that shook the walls of his lab. In that moment, nothing mattered except the weapon. His hands were slick with sweat, his body aching from the endless hours spent hunched over the controls, but he didn't stop. Humanity's survival depended on his success. Meanwhile, Zaran's forces continued their relentless march. The alien leader had grown bored of toying with the humans. His soldiers moved methodically, rounding up survivors and systematically destroying anything that might be of use to the humans. The alien ships hovered above the planet, scanning for any sign of resistance, but the planet's defenses were non-existent. Zaran's laughter echoed in the communication channels, a cold, mocking sound that seemed to permeate every corner of the world. As Ethan finished the final component of the weapon, a sense of grim determination washed over him. This was it. There would be no more time after this. If the weapon didn't work, Earth would fall. His eyes fixed on the countdown timer ticking down in the corner of his screen. The end was drawing near. With a final, steady breath, Ethan made the last adjustment and activated the device. The world waited. The weapon was complete, and Ethan knew that there would be no turning back now. His lab, filled with the quiet hum of machinery, felt smaller as he prepared to face the unimaginable. His fingers trembled slightly as he held the device in his hands, the last hope of humanity's survival. Outside, the sounds of devastation grew louder. The alien forces had crushed nearly all resistance, and the survivors had retreated into hiding, desperate for any sign of hope. Zaran, the alien leader, had begun rounding up the last of the humans, securing the remaining pockets of resistance. It seemed like victory was inevitable for the invaders. Yet amidst the devastation, Ethan's heart beat with a strange sense of determination. He had no choice but to carry out his plan. He gathered what little strength he had left and made his way to the surface. The air felt thick with tension, the remnants of civilization lying in ruins all around him. Buildings that once stood tall now lay in heaps of concrete and steel, smoldering from the alien assault. The ground trembled with every distant explosion, the sound of alien weapons unleashing destruction echoing through the streets. But Ethan did not falter. He moved swiftly, blending into the shadows, staying out of sight of the alien patrols that still roamed the streets. The alien ships hung above, casting dark shadows across the land, as though watching every movement. The weapon in his hand was small, but its potential was enormous. If he could reach the heart of the alien ship, he could disable its power core, cutting off their control over the fleet. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot humanity had left. He climbed to the roof of a nearby building, the ruins of the city stretching out below him. His eyes scanned the sky, locking onto the massive alien ship hovering above. Its metal surface reflected the fading light of day, an imposing and terrifying sight. There was no time to waste. Ethan aimed the weapon at the alien ship, his breath steady, his mind focused. His heart pounded in his chest as he squeezed the trigger. The weapon fired with a brilliant flash, a pulse of energy that shot through the air like a bolt of lightning. For a moment, everything stood still. Then the alien ship trembled, a deep, resonating hum vibrating through the air. Ethan watched in awe as the ship's lights flickered and its systems began to fail. It was working. The power core was destabilizing. The once imposing vessel began to sway in the sky, losing its grip on control. Ethan barely had time to react before the ship lurched, its engines sputtering as it plunged downward. The deafening sound of the ship crashing echoed through the city, shaking the ground beneath Ethan's feet. For the first time since the invasion began, there was silence. The alien forces, once so confident in their superiority, were now struggling to understand what had happened. Saran, watching from the ground, stood frozen in disbelief. His mighty ship, once invincible, had been brought down by a single shot from a human weapon. The world watched in stunned silence as the alien ship crashed, its massive form crumpling upon impact like a toy dropped from a great height. Dust and debris filled the air, and a deep tremor shook the ground. For a moment, it seemed as though time had stopped, the shock of what had just happened rippling through every corner of the earth. No one could believe it. The mighty, indestructible ship that had loomed over the planet for days, mocking humanity, destroying cities, breaking the will of every person it encountered, was now a burning wreck on the ground. Ethan stood frozen on the rooftop, his breath shallow, his heart racing. He had done it. The weapon he created had worked, against all odds. The alien forces, who had seen themselves as unstoppable, were now faced with something they had never anticipated: humanity's defiance. But there was no time to celebrate. The chaos of the crash was only the beginning. Zaran, the alien leader, stared up at the wreckage of his ship in disbelief. He couldn't fathom how it was possible. His forces, his technology, everything he had trusted, had been rendered useless by a human-made weapon. A sense of dread began to creep into his mind as he watched his soldiers scramble, trying to regain control. Panic spread among the alien ranks as their command structure began to crumble. Zaran's eyes burned with fury, but also with something else: fear. He had underestimated humanity. The humans were not as weak as he had thought. This weapon, this unexpected turn of events, had turned the tide in their favor. As the alien forces regrouped, trying to make sense of the situation, Ethan knew he had to act fast. The weapon had worked, but it wasn't enough to end the invasion. Saran was still alive, and the alien forces remained a powerful threat. If humanity was going to have any hope of reclaiming the planet, they needed to act now, before the aliens could regroup and counterattack. With the alien ship burning in the distance, Ethan turned and ran through the ruined city streets, making his way toward the underground resistance group he had contacted earlier. They were the last line of defense, the last hope for organizing a counteroffensive, but as he moved through the streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The pulse of energy that had crippled the alien ship had only disrupted a small part of their invasion force. Zaran and his soldiers would not give up so easily. They would regroup, adapt, and fight back harder than ever. The battle was far from over. Yet for the first time since the invasion had begun, there was a glimmer of hope. The humans had shown that they could fight back. The aliens, despite their superior technology, were not invincible. Ethan's heart swelled with a new kind of determination. He had done what no one else thought possible, and now it was time for humanity to finish what had been started. The invasion was not over, but the aliens had underestimated them. They had made a grave mistake. The tide had shifted, and now there was no turning back. As Ethan made his way through the war-torn city, the once thriving world now felt like a place on the brink of oblivion. The shock of the alien ship's destruction still echoed in his mind, but there was no time for rest. The alien forces, shaken but far from defeated, were regrouping quickly. Zaran, filled with seething anger and determination, had already begun coordinating a counteroffensive. His soldiers were not the kind to back down easily, especially after their initial overconfidence had been shattered. Ethan knew the weapon had only bought them a brief moment, not a victory. The resistance fighters were gathering, their numbers small but filled with a fierce resolve. They had witnessed the impossible. A single human weapon had crippled the most powerful alien ship in their fleet. The morale boost was undeniable, but as Ethan reached the command center, he understood just how dire the situation remained. The resistance, though brave, was scattered. The aliens still controlled most of Earth's cities, and their technology was still formidable. Yet, as they huddled around the makeshift command table, a sense of unity began to form. They could win this, but only if they acted as one. Ethan, now working alongside the resistance leaders, proposed a plan to strike at the heart of the alien invasion. They had already seen that the aliens were vulnerable. Their technology could be disrupted by the right weapon. But now it wasn't just about the weapon, it was about mobilizing Earth's last remaining forces. The resistance would need to move quickly and decisively, targeting the alien command centers and crippled ships. Coordinating with the few surviving military units, they would launch a series of surprise attacks, buying time for the resistance to strike again. As the plan was set into motion, the human forces moved with newfound hope. They had seen the impossible happen once, and now, they believed it could happen again. The remnants of humanity rallied together, determined not to let Earth fall. Meanwhile, Zaran, still reeling from the loss of his flagship, had no intention of allowing his forces to retreat. His arrogance had been wounded, but his resolve was ironclad. He knew this wasn't the end, and he vowed to crush any last resistance with an iron fist. The alien leader began to prepare for a final assault, confident that he could squash the rebellion. What he hadn't counted on, however, was the fierceness of humanity's spirit. As Earth's remaining forces gathered, they launched their first coordinated strike against an alien base. The battle that followed was unlike any the aliens had encountered. For the first time, they found themselves fighting not against soldiers they could easily overpower, but against a people driven by desperation, hope, and the will to survive. Ethan, along with the resistance, launched the final strike. The weapon had done its part, but now it was the humans who would ensure that the alien forces knew Earth would never bow. The battle raged on, but with every move, the invaders found their grip on the planet slipping. Zaran's forces, once so certain of their dominance, were beginning to realize that humanity was not so easily conquered. The war for Earth had only just begun, but for the first time the aliens had reason to fear. The humans had proven they could fight back, and they would not stop until they reclaimed their home.